trout fishing when the water is high and on the rise can be difficult. So today I've got 7 tips to help you catch more trout in high water conditions. What is going on, you out there Mavericks? Welcome back to the channel. Now in wintertime trout fishing, more than any time of the year, you're going to encounter high water trout fishing conditions. And high water conditions can come from big rainstorms, snow melt-offs, or superstorms that change conditions in a matter of hours. Now when it comes to trout fishing in high water conditions, I always go rely on tip number 7, which is to go find slower and calmer moving waters. Now when the body of water that you're trout fishing starts to rise super quickly, it's going to change conditions in a matter of hours, and over the course of a couple of days after, say, a big rainstorm, that's going to change the way that the body of water fishes and where the fish hang out. The fish are going to spread out and they're going to want to get into that calmer water, especially with more water in the system that's running through. They don't want to be thrashed around in that fast moving current and water. One of the first things that I do when I get to the body of water is to go find those slower moving pockets and areas and use those as my first area to target winter trout. Now tip number 6 is to check your leader length, whether you're plunking off the bottom, whether you're trolling from the boat, say you're using a bobber and a jig or a bobber and worms or whatever bait that you've got underneath the bobber. You need to check your leader length because with rising water conditions and high water conditions, the fish are going to spread out and be in different areas, especially different zones of the water. Now I remember distinctly on one winter trout fishing adventure when the water had gotten super high after a rainstorm, I fished this section of water for say 30 or 40 minutes, and at one point I made 5 casts and lost 5 lures in a row because I didn't see the underwater tree or the branches or just the new debris that was in the area where I was constantly getting snagged. So this is where changing your leader length will help you find the fish, but also make sure that you don't run into the same snag 5 times in a row. Now tip number 5 is to use scent aggressively, and in off-colored water conditions, especially when the water is on the rise, you're going to have to rely on scent more than anything to get the attention of the trout. And when the water is super stained, trout have a harder time seeing your baits move in the water. You got to get it sometimes right in front of their face. But with scent, because they smell in parts per millions and billions, they're going to have an easier time sniffing out your bait and going after it based off that scent trail. So in high water conditions, make sure you got enough scent applied, say every 20 to 30 minutes, depending on the body of water that you're fishing, and you're going to give yourself a better chance at a hookup or 2 throughout the day. Now tip number 4 is to cover more water, and when the water is rising and super high, it's going to spread the trout out and give them some different areas and slower moving water areas to hang out and be in the slowest current possible. And in high water conditions, especially when the water is rising, the trout are going to find some different areas to hang out, and in dirty water they're going to try to go for the cleanest and calmest water possible. So by covering a lot of water, you may stumble on that one pocket that has a ton of trout in it and you might hit the jackpot for the day. Now tip number 3 is to get after some vibration, and this really relates to fishing with spinners or different plug baits when you're trolling behind the boat. Now in winter trout fishing, especially when the water is off color, there's going to be a lot of dirt and stuff in the water, so using scent's going to be key, but also a little bit of sound and vibration from spinners, if you're fishing those in your body of water, can make a huge difference to get the trout to congregate and get their attention from a farther distance away. And tip number 2 is to fish the body of water when it's on the fall. When an area has a huge water event, say a big rainstorm, and the rivers, creeks, and streams start to rise super quickly, conditions can be really rough. And most of the time when rivers and creeks and streams where the water goes straight up, like the example here on the screen, it can be really tough to get a bite. And a lot of times you're actually better fishing when the river or the creek or stream is actually on the fall, when conditions are mellowing out, the river is clearing up, and you're not getting all that thrashing debris and extra flow in the water when things are starting to calm down. I'm going to fish a couple days after that body of water is on the fall, gets those trout less freaked out, let the water calm down, and gets me better conditions to catch trout in the winter time. And tip number 1 is something that I go to all the time in dirty water and very high water in the winter time, which is to fish with really bright baits. Now when I'm fishing high water and off-colored water conditions in the winter time, my typical go go-tos are chartreuse, orange, and pink. But I gotta say, over the last couple of years, fishing straight up white can be very deadly effective in off-water conditions. One of my favorite baits and one of my most famous trips out in the wintertime, I was struggling all day and just decided to pull out some of those micro tiny white marshmallows, adding a little bit of scent to them, plunking those off the bottom, and I kid you guys not, I turned out from no bites to catching 6 fish in a matter of, let's say, 15 to 20 minutes. It was nuts. It was the slowest day I had experienced in the wintertime. Nobody else was catching them around me, and I switched to a white marshmallow and bam, hook up, bam, hook up. And so sometimes you just gotta simplify it, go with something bright, and white is very bright in dirty and off-water conditions. Now that was an epic day, but the only reason I ended up with only 6 hookups for that day is my friend Ed that I was fishing with needed a stack, and let's just say we ran out of marshmallows super fast. And there you guys have it, the top 7 high water winter trout fishing tips. Hope you guys got some great information today. Smash the thumbs up on that video, hit the subscribe button down below, and don't forget, and as always you guys, the outdoors is a gift, share it with others. Oof. Too many marshmallows for dessert. Ugh. Ugh. Mouth's all sugary.